Diary, President Cyril Ramaphosa is today expected to hold a dialogue on gender-based violence as part of the 16 days of activism against violence against women and children campaign. Also, just recapping those statistics, cumulative number of confirmed COVID-19 cases in South Africa now at 772,252. Total number of deaths, 21,083. 716,444 people have since recovered from the coronavirus, which means that the total number of active cases is at 34,725. And just a recap on those numbers, should you need any assistance, 24-hour hotline 0800 029 999, and you can also make use of the WhatsApp service 0600 123 456. Alternatively, you can download the COVID-19 Alert SA app, and those are some of the ways in which you can engage with professionals on this matter. Trending topics now. First up, hashtag Kaizer Chiefs. The less said about Kaizer Chiefs, I think, the better. So they went down to Moroka Swallows last night. And what a performance by Swallows, though. And this victory against Chiefs puts them at the top of the log. They leapfrogged Sundowns, as you heard from Valen there. But stellar performance by Maswaiswai. And Kaizer Chiefs, hapless as ever. And of course, this conversation trending on so many fronts, whether it's Kaizer Chiefs, Kosi for Life, Parker, Billiard, Middendorp even came out. People saying, guys, you owe Middendorp an apology. It wasn't Middendorp, it is the players. And people talking about how Kaizer Chiefs have basically lost their way. No scouting, or what has happened to the scouting at Kaizer Chiefs, because hapless performance on the field of play. Next up is, of course, the Grammys, and here also much to talk about. The nominations put out yesterday, and of course, South Africa, Trevor Noah. He will be presenting the next Grammys, but those awards announced last night. Lots of talk about The Weeknd missing out on any nominations. Also, Taylor Swift bagging, a whole host of nominations. And so much talk about the Grammys. Also, that group from Korea that were nominated. So a lot of talk around the nominations here. And then hashtag Donald Trump. You heard in the news there, of course, that transition process seems to be taking place in full swing now to the Biden campaign. And of course, President Donald Trump seemingly hasn't given it up, and 70% of his supporters, it's reported, still believe that the election was stolen and that Trump was robbed. He hasn't quite given up that particular narrative, and some of the reports going with that particular story. But it would seem as though the president-elect Joe Biden is now forging full steam ahead in the transition. And finally, Cutting Edge again last night, honing in on the issue of churches and pastors and fake pastors, and how people are being duped and fleeced by these fake pastors. And a big talking point, something that South Africa has been grappling with, and it would seem as though it just carries on unabated, and that South Africa is almost a hotspot for these types of activities, with these churches just mushrooming all over the show, and people seemingly particularly gullible and being taken for a ride, as they would say, those who are opining on this matter, by the so-called men of God. So that's why Cutting Edge is trending this morning. So that takes care of our trending topics. And in our question of the day, yesterday, of course, the 16 Days of Activism campaign launched. And we're asking you, what are your views on the efficacy of this particular campaign, the annual 16 Days of Activism for No Violence Against Women and Children? And it almost seems as though every year, when you get to this point, there are the most gruesome stories to just highlight the plight and why this is such a serious matter. Over the weekend, the story emerged of this 45-year-old man in Pretoria who raped an 11-year-old and a 13-year-old. And he actually took them, bought alcohol, then took them to a hotel. And the younger girl, the 11-year-old, then somehow escaped and reported this matter to hotel staff, who filmed this man as he was sitting there as they called police. And it's just the most gruesome stories that one hears all the time. So what are your views on the campaign that we have annually to try and highlight, of course, not just the plight, but also to get people to understand and be more active around these particular issues? And I'm just reminded of yesterday as well. Someone on Facebook had put out a story, and I asked her to keep me posted, and she has, in fact, on the story, where you have a teenager at school who actually was pregnant, and then they found out that the girl was actually pregnant, allegedly, by her uncle, whose wife is unable to have children. So she has to have the children for the couple. These are the sort of stories that we have to deal with, quite apart from this rape scourge. You know, it's a pandemic in this country, and violence against women. Law enforcement people will tell you perhaps not doing as well as they should around this particular matter. But tell us what your views are about the campaign and its efficacy. At Morning Live, SABC will share your views as we progress through the morning. We're going to take a break.